order. Do we need a roll call?
Yes, yes. Veronica Cordova,
She's not on yet.
she's not on yet, but she's expected. Okay. Preston Elkins,
Here.
Preston Self,
Here.
I think Michael Trujillo is absent. And Chris Wood,
Here.
and I always include Mr. Miller as ex officio. So, but I don't think it's required, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So it looks like we have a quorum. First order of business is approval of the March 12th, 2025 minutes. We have a motion to approve the March 12th minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Wood and a second by Mr. Self. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, discussion and action items, presentation and approval of the fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget for recommendation.
Great. So we've covered a lot of our budget in detail, or pretty much in detail, at our finance budget workshop that we had a while back. So I presented an Excel spreadsheet, and we also emailed it to everybody so that, you know, on your downtime, you can take a look at it. So that's what you have before you is the recap report. That will encompass all the numbers that are summarized for us. And then also in your packet is a detail of the budget. So in that way, if there's any questions on the numbers, you can see the totals and where they're coming from. Okay. So a lot of information and a lot of numbers. So we'll touch on a couple of the funds from our recap report. The main one, of course, is our general fund. The column where you see cash and investments, that right now is a projected estimated balance that we are projecting our ending balance as of June 30th will be. So of course those will change once we do the final report. The final report will be due July 31st. So you'll see those numbers, these columns will change because the numbers aren't exact. So our revenues and our expenditures, again, those are forecasted amounts that we predict we'll receive. We talked about in our budget finance meeting, estimating about 1.7 million increase in GRT and being conservative and not estimating the full 3 million until we start to see some of those revenues. We'll start to hopefully see that in our September, October timeframe, okay? So with the cash investments, revenues, transfers, expenditures, you can see a projected balance at the end of the fiscal year for FY26 of about 3.8 million. Now, as of June 30th, 2025, we may have some cash in our general fund, and that's kind of what I estimated in there is that beginning cash balance of 1.8, taking into consideration if we do have some money in that cash, I would like to move it over to our local government investment pools. We already have an account set up with them just to place it in there. Should there be any shortfalls that we will need, we would have that to cover that, okay, for our general fund. And it would only probably be about 100,000. We'll go from there. We have a small corrections funds that part of the municipal court fees go into that fund. It is restricted. I still have to get statutes from state to make sure we can utilize it for other expenditures. But in the meantime, it's just projecting that we'll receive 10,000 and 10,000 in expenditures. Our EMS fund is our ambulance grant funded fund that we get.
It's close.
Wait on the desk.
We're golden.
Good.
Thanks, Chief.
We have our fire protection fund, the allocation that we receive from state fire funds. The recruitment fund you see is that, we'll be receiving 75%. Right, yeah, 75%, so you'll see that in revenues and expenditures. Law Enforcement Protection Fund, they are, I believe they're gonna be awarded the 123,500, and that is also to be expended in the same fiscal year. And then the last year for the Law Enforcement Recruitment Fund, this upcoming fiscal year will be 56,250, same thing. It is what's received, we have to expend it in that same year. Our lodgers tax, they recently had a lodgers tax committee meeting where they approved 113,000 for events. There'll be some available that they're wanting to do another meeting to award in the fall, also some more events. So then you'll see a budget adjustment for those, okay? Municipal streets, revenues, a lot of that in that fund is grant funded. So the main one is our TPF that we have been awarded. That's what you see there along with some capital outlay. You'll also probably start to see, well, we're gonna have to encumber the funds in municipal street for some of that we need to encumber at least 5% for the fiscal year, but the projects will be happening next fiscal year, okay? Our recreation fund, that is the fund that we plan to utilize for the upcoming youth sports program. Right now, we don't have any revenues projected, but we did go ahead and budget for expenditures. That 99,669 that you see is a forecasted budget amount for a position, okay? And that would include for salary benefits.
So we don't have any expenditures related to the actual, no idea how to say this,
Well,
expenses related to the sports outside of the salaries?
We don't know yet, so that's why.
yeah,
Okay,
so
so
we
you'll just do a
can,
budget adjustment for that.
we'll do budget adjustments, and it'll probably we'll have a better idea once we get somebody in place, to have more of an idea what
To
it
know
will
what they
cost. And then we'll budget for even revenues because we'll be collecting, I'm assuming, some startup fees or registration fees, so that way.
Okay.
we'll do that.
For that position, are we, do we know what that was? I guess we know it'd be 75,000, what would that be?
So in the budget adjustments, because we wanted to move forward as quickly as possible, I believe we budgeted about 60.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the extra is the benefits.
Yes.
Okay. And we're posting that today, is that right? Right, cool.
The next ones are our ARPA fund, American Rescue Plan Act. I am very hopeful that we'll actually be done with it, and that 26,000 is the carport for the police department that we're waiting on. I'm thinking we'll be done with it June 30th, so you may see that come off on the final budget, but I did place that in there just in case, but it's the last item that's pending. Our LGB Bateman opioid fund, that one is settlement funds that we received from the federal. That cash is currently what we have. It is very restricted. In fact, we have to have state approval before we would use any of it, but it's already allocated for the behavioral health. So we won't budget anything until we would know what we're gonna budget for. Okay, the Cannabis Regulation Act, it's a fund that it has to be reported in its own fund, but it's not restricted. So you can see that 200,000 tentatively right now being transferred to general fund should we need it. Other special revenue fund, that one mainly encompasses like our library donation grant fund, the PATS. That's one of the big ones that's in there is our PATS transportation fund. The next one is the CDBG Hub project. That one has been on the books for a couple years. My goal is to clean that up. It probably just didn't get closed out right, but it does have a balance of $1,301. Capital projects, that will encompass two funds, which is our 301 and our 312. 301, we've been utilizing that fund for grant funded projects. So examples are ambulance that partially got funded from there. Our healthy living grant, our other city park grant, those have been in those funds. And then our next ones are federal water project loan debt service. That is where we collect the revenues to pay our annual debt service for our water loan. And you can see that payment, the annual payments, $1,329,000. And then other debt service, this is where we have our other debt service, and it's a complete net zero by the end of the year, as we have transfers in to pay for the debt service and then the expenditure. Okay. Then our next one is our water enterprise fund. One of our bigger funds that we have, we're estimating cash about $3 million. I'm thinking a little bit more, but again, that's one fund that you will see we are operating in the red. This fiscal year, we're about a $2 million shortfall. So we're going to really tap into this beginning cash balance to be able to utilize that. That's another one that I would like to hopefully move some money to our LGIP, because we're operating in a shortfall. The following year will be the same thing. Even without capital expenditures for this fund, it's about $1 million that we're needing.
Why do we not, and maybe this is an answer for the council, or a question for the council, but why do we not implement the new rates for 2025 to help offset that loss? I just don't know why we would operate in the red. So possibly something to look at is raising the rates in order to help quit moving from the general fund to this enterprise fund. Just a thought. Would you agree that
We've been working on it, and it actually has some numbers. It just needs to, it'll probably be the next finance committee meeting with the council. Okay, so.
Consider for sure. Okay. We have a lot of, so the amounts, you see a lot of the amounts. We have some water trust board projects, and then that's what they're also in revenues and in expenditures, but that's why the amounts are so much bigger. I think it's 3 or 4 million in the projects that they'll be working this next fiscal year. And then solid waste is our next fund. Also, we can see revenues 1.5, expenditures 1.6. So right now, a little less than 100,000, or a little bit more than 100,000 difference. We had initially in the draft budget that I had proposed to council, having a shortfall of about 500,000 or 300,000 for a new truck, but you'll see that hopefully in the budget adjustments. So that way it's not so much of a shortfall in the next fiscal year. But hopefully we can take care of it this fiscal year. And then our next one's airport. A lot of those funds in our airport are federally and state funded. And the convention center right now, that one's our YAM. So any revenues that from leasing the YAM or expenditures are in that fund. Our utility reserve, those accounts are set up for our water loan debt service that are required by them. The one that says, the fund that says internal revenue service, that's what fund we're using for unemployment wages. And then gross receipts, taxes held for others, that's just balance that we pay for the gross receipts that we collect when our water bills go out, and then we pay next month. And then other trust and agency, there are a couple funds in there, but the main one in that one is our economic development fund. So you will see a total with all of our funds combined, a $34 million budget. Any questions?
Can you tell me what the $5,000 expenditure is on the cannabis regulation?
Those are GRT fees. So when GRT sends us the ACH, we collect it and gross it up, so we have to account for their fees that we charge us. That's what that is.
I know I've asked this before, but on the water enterprise fund, on the expenditure line, subscriptions and dues of 819,000.
Yes.
What the heck is that?
So that one's gonna be our Ute, administration annual fee.
That's
That
right.
last year was 715,000, I believe, and this year I just received the email where it went up, so that's what that is. And that is usually a resolution we bring before council anyways, before we pay it.
But just because of cost of living,
I don't, I'm gonna say that Orlando,
That was paid at one time.
Yeah.
It increases at level.
okay, so it's a general increase every year.
It used to be like $50,000 or something like that. As the project that comes.
and we have a percentage that we have to pay out of the loans that they take. So I think they're just getting more loans, and I think prices are increasing, so. But Orlando could explain it more. They said the bill won't come out until August,
Mhm.
I think, so then the resolution will come to council. And I'm gonna take a guess that Orlando will be there speaking on that behalf. You have any questions?
Okay. So that, on that one, we need a recommendation to approve for line A. Okay, so for the presentation and approval of the fiscal year 2026 preliminary budget for recommendation. What is the discretion of the?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Self and a second by Mr. Wood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, presentation and approval of the fiscal year 2025 fourth quarter budget adjustments.
So this will be our current budget, of course, part one, as there will be, I think, in part two and part three, maybe, we'll see. There's a lot of moving parts in our budget. You should be seeing the next form is this bar. This is what it looks like. This one.
We will see.
So the very first line item is just a required reserve from the operating general fund. You see that $810,000, that adjustment is ACE had an event and donated the proceeds to our animal control. So that's what that is. They will be using it for animal control supplies, some locks and dog food that they needed. So we went ahead and got that in there so they can go ahead and
much was it?
expend it.
810.
810.
I was gonna be very impressed.
Oh, I see.
We made that kind of, sorry to disappoint.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
There we go. No, okay, perfect.
All right, the next one is just adjustments to our fire protection fund, two actuals. You'll see a couple of them on there. I worked with Chief Kathy on these to get these pretty close to being accurate for our year. All right. Fire protection, then we have a transfer in, transfer out, $45,000. So this was just to cover a cash deficit initially when we did the $45,000. Then we received the $112,000 from the law enforcement grant. So we're just transferring it back to general fund. And then the next one where it has 112,576, you'll see where we start with municipal street budget adjustments. Again, those are for the grants that we've been awarded. We're gonna start issuing purchase orders for our TPS, so that's what you see there. And then finishing out a capital outlay project on North Avenue K. That's what those budget adjustments are for. Then the recreation, that's where you see it, part of the adjustments. So we can hopefully have someone on staff and get us going with the project. Again, this is one that we can do a budget adjustment to see once we know what we will need, equipment or such that we would know. Our American Rescue Plan Act is the next department that we're adjusting. That one is again to actuals. We are just about done and expending the initial 860,000 that, came before you back in, I believe, September, October. Okay, then the next one is our capital projects fund. This is our 301 and our 312 fund. 301 is mainly grant funded projects. 312 are city capital projects that the city funds, and it's not grant funded. In this fund, I would like to adjust so that we can be able to purchase a garbage truck from this fund. So there were some amounts already budgeted. I adjusted those to zero, or would like to zero those out so that we can allocate a big portion to equipment and machinery to be able to purchase a garbage truck. They are, right now, the quote we have is 315,000.
Yeah.
And if we get it on order, we would have it how soon, Steve?
Mid-November.
Mid-November? Okay.
You think we even need one?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do this calls, I'm good.
Then I'm also adjusting to account for the city, the softball complex. I know that grant has a name, City Sport or City something, Parks Improvement Grant. But that's what that is for. We're starting on I believe the design with Lydic. So that's what that is. And then you'll see probably budget adjustments for rollovers because we're not probably going to get it completed this fiscal year. See it next fiscal year.
And we're looking at August starting that, is that what she said?
Yeah. That's August 1st September.
Fantastic.
Okay, then the next one's our solid waste. That one, right now, we currently had a budget, a $200,000 budget in transfers out from solid waste to general fund. We're fortunate right now where general fund doesn't need that transfer. I would like to reallocate that transfer, keep it in solid waste and allocate that towards a garbage truck. So that solid waste would fund, 115,000. So that's what that budget adjustment is, so that we could get 2 trucks on order soon. We could have them in November like Steve is hoping. Yeah, solid waste, I just looked yesterday, I think we spent about 252,000 in maintenance just in solid waste. We could have almost had a new truck. And airport, just a couple of budget adjustments there. One of them is in our insurance claim, 11,431, and then you can see it coming back because insurance reimburses us. And then $29,000 for fuel, as we have to buy bulk fuel. That's what that is, adjusting the revenues as we receive 29,000 more than we had budgeted, but we also need to buy more fuel. So that's what that is. That's budget adjustments. Any questions?
I don't know that I have any from you.
I do not.
Okay, so for item B, presentation and approval of fiscal year 2025 fourth quarter budget adjustments, part 1. Do we have a motion to approve?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. Item C, review of expense report for March and April of 2025.
This one I will stand for any questions, all the information before you is presented. There's March and April. The April was quite a bit more, I think 3 million and something in expenditures, but that's because in April, our annual $1.3 million annual debt service is due.
I see we bought, is that a PD? Did we buy a new truck? Any idea? 33,000 to Don Chalmers Ford.
That's equipment to Don Chalmersburg, yes.
To equip the ones that they received, capital level for last year.
Growth, yeah, they're growth
Growth
funds.
funds.
Any questions for the April or March and April expense report? Hearing none, what is the pleasure of the committee?
The motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the March and April 2025 expenses. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Last item appears to be item D, discussion and recommendation on banking services with JP Stone Community Bank.
And so this one, it will be the recommendation of the committee, maybe perhaps we table it as, I spoke with Ms. Davis from JP Stone last week. I requested that I have some information to present and bring before Finance Committee by Monday. I didn't receive anything. I know she's been super busy as well. So perhaps I can bring something forward on next Finance Committee for JP Stone. I had offered JP Stone banking services for the Economic Development Fund. And then our LGB abatement opioid. And she said that they would do it. It's just that I didn't receive the information.
So we will table item D. And I guess, do we need a motion to table? Anybody? I wouldn't think so, but okay. Any other business, any matter not known about or which could have not been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda? Anybody? Hearing none.
Question.
Veronica, possibly?
Hi. Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Lily, on the lodger's tax, when you were talking about that, did we issue funds to Eastern for the spring concert that they had to cancel?
Are you talking about their last event that they had that they were awarded?
Yes, was that for the Breland concert?
No, they were awarded, I believe, 53,000 for our upcoming fiscal year.
Okay, so it wasn't earmarked for a certain project that they needed to reallocate.
We have to look because that would be the previous lodger's tax,
Okay,
not the one that they just had.
Usually they only do that for reimbursement, though. They wouldn't advance any money. do they?
Right now.
yeah, but I think they did some advertisement and probably had costs, and I just want to make sure that we're complying with that.
Oh, yes.
That program. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you.